Okay, Bev, so if you could, you were here when the wells were contaminated.
They were not contaminated ever, but it was coming.
It was what? It was coming?
It was coming.
Okay. So if you could, talk a little bit about how you approached solving that problem and what was the outcome of it. And if you want to go through everything from the standpoint of hiring the attorney and the lawsuit, whatever it is that you want to tell us about that particular case, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. I think it was about 1989. We had a hydrogeologist that worked for the waterworks, and he always did our wells. They have to be cleaned every once in a while. And so he was from Reynolds, it's a national company, and it was Leon Simpson. And so he's driving down 128 to come and check our wells. Our wells were over where the school is.
Over by where the new
Yeah, we
Floyd
have
Rivers
5
is
acres over there. He's coming down to check our wells, and he sees a pipe in the ground at the Y where it goes up into Hooven. That was a well that you go down in and you're taking samples out of. So he gets out of his truck and he starts looking around at it. Why is a monitoring well there? You know? And at that point, somebody from Chevron, I think it was a plant manager, he came over and he told him he couldn't look at that. So he comes to the waterworks and he said, well, I just got runoff from a monitoring well. That was, I think, on a Thursday or Friday. On Monday morning, I got a call from the Ohio EPA. And they said...
And this is right after he showed you he couldn't do the testing.
He wasn't doing the testing. Chevron was doing the
Okay.
testing. They had monitoring wells in. There's still some probably over around there. There is on that Route 50, there's still monitoring wells. And so I get a call from the Ohio EPA, and they said, we probably need to talk to Cleves Waterworks, and we need to set up a meeting. So they sent the guy down from Ohio EPA. He comes and he tells them tells us that Chevron had this spill and that they're afraid it's going to move. And what happened with Chevron was they had wells inside that plant, and they were going to vacate that plant. So they started shutting down their wells. And when they shut down their wells, there was a cone of influence that was holding that pollution on their property. So it's like putting food coloring on a glass of wet sugar. It just spreads. The thing that survived and saved us, Cleves Waterworks, was the Great Miami Aquifer. At Miami Town, I gotta get this right, the river is recharging the aquifer. Because if you notice when we have a flood or something, or a drought in particular, at Miami Town it'll go dry. It never goes dry at Cleves. Because at that point, the river is not recharging the aquifer. The aquifer is recharging the Great Miami River. And it does that all the way down until it meets Ohio River Aquifer. Great Miami Aquifer is an aquifer we're saving. It's 3 miles long in Cleves, so it's underneath a lot of our buildings, and it's one of the biggest aquifers in the United States. So it starts around Vandalia, the Maumee River comes out, and then you got an aquifer coming down, and it picks up steam all the way down. So they came and they told the water board about the contamination over at the Chevron plant. At that point, we were told there was 25 million gallons of gasoline floating on top of the aquifer, because gasoline is lighter than water, but it was mainly, they came here in 1932, we had the World War II, Korea, Vietnam. They made jet fuel there during Vietnam. There are water-soluble parts to the aquifer, to that gasoline. One of them was lead. Lead will become water-soluble, and maybe even selenium and mercury will. I don't know about those two. You'd have to check on that. But I know specifically that lead, over 30 years, it's floating on top of the aquifer, will eventually become water-soluble to your drinking water.
Which means it's not fit to be consumed.
That's true.
Okay.
So what kept us from getting a hit with a VOC of any kind was the Great Miami River. But when we first started talking to Chevron, the spill was 1,200 feet away. When we actually moved the wells, but it was a 10-year period, it was 600 feet away. So eventually it may have got into the Great Miami River, and eventually you're getting it down in here where your wells are. So at that point, the board felt like that this was going to be above what our solicitor would be able to do.
And why did you feel that way?
Because he's a lawyer and he doesn't know environmental law. If you're going to do with the environment, you got environmental law. So they went to Thompson, Hine, and Flory. There was an attorney there called Charlie Annis. He gave a lot of money to Hamilton County Libraries. He was a very well-known attorney. And so they went to talk to Charlie Annis. He was born and raised in Addison, Ohio. Okay. And so he recommended this girl, Jill something. So they started investigating, Thompson, Hine, and Flory did. They started investigating, which is a lot of big companies do this because they have issues all over the United States. Chevron's a big company. And so they called us back and they said they could not represent us because it was a conflict of interest, because Chevron had done work for asbestos removal in Cleveland with the boats that come in on the, Erie, Lake Erie. So at that point, they recommended Kevin Hopper. Kevin Hopper was a person, he worked for Procter & Gamble at first. He was a mechanical engineer, and then he went into environmental law. He had worked on some places in North and South Carolina. He worked at Piketon when they dealt with the federal government. He had also worked with Eric lost his job at Reading.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But Eric didn't know him.
But Eric had nothing to do with the issue in Reading. That was
No. This was all going through our attorney at Thompson, Hine, and Flory. Because, anyway, so that at that point, Kevin Hopper comes on board, and we paid him directly. The water board paid him. They had to pay the solicitor at some time because we had to keep counsel. Council has to know what you're doing, even though you're elected officials. Over here, you're only there for the waterworks. But it was a very, very long fight. And but the most important thing about it was that you have to keep your water safe, and you should never ever give away your water. You shouldn't do that.
Why don't you explain that? Because when I do an article on this, I think it's important for the residents to understand why you feel that way.
I feel that way because if they got your water, they got your control. Everybody needs water. Your body needs water. But it has to be kept safe. We will not know if the world heats up. That aquifer has to be protected because it's one of the largest in the United States.
You said in an earlier discussion we had that you went through a process to get it protected.
I did.
Could you explain a little bit about that?
There's, I guess it's called the Miami Conservancy. It was put in effect during,
It's probably after the flood, the
right,
big flood.
the 1913 flood,
yeah.
something like that. And OKI called me. Jane Wilkie from OKI called me and said, the Great Miami Aquifer was under federal protection all the way down, except when it got to the Hamilton County line. You got Fernald going on over here on the side issue at the same time. And so they wanted to get it under federal protection till we got to the Cleves corporate limit, which at that point it becomes joined with the Ohio River aquifer. You can tell where your aquifers are. If you got shale, you got hills that got shales in it, shale, gray stuff. That gray stuff probably goes down a ways, and then you got sand and gravel. That's your aquifers. Some people called it an underground river. Our hydrogeologists told us there's caves in the Great Miami Aquifer. They're divers. When they go down and look at our wells, they actually go down in the well thing to go and look and clean the wells. They have been swimming in the aquifer. And so I wouldn't want to do it. Give me a rope. But so that aquifer is huge. And it needs to be protected for the people of the United States, not just little Cleves. We're part of the aquifer, but you shouldn't be able to dump oil on it or gasoline on it. We don't want to drink that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you know, recently over in Whitewater Township, very close to where our wells are, they put a Shell station in over there. Is that concerned?
I don't know because I didn't work there then, but there is a program called Wellhead Protection, and they are supposed to have the gasoline tanks are supposed to be double or triple cased, so if there was a spill. The Whitewater Aquifer is under federal protection already. We didn't have to go get it under federal protection. When I worked on it to get it, I spoke at UC. This is a big deal to get it under federal protection to where we got it under federal protection.
You're talking now, though.
The Great Miami.
The Great Miami, correct.
The Whitewater Aquifer was already under federal protection because the river and the aquifer runs interstate. So it's under federal protection. But the problem that you always have is people got to understand when they put in something, they're the eyes and ears for the federal government. They don't come down and look and see what your aquifer is.
You're talking about the federal government doesn't come down. It depends on the contractor themselves and how good a job do they follow the federal regulations,
right,
things like that.
Got it.
So in other words, you're trusting somebody that you may not be able to trust, is what I think we're saying.
Zoning helps. That you would have zoning, but for instance,
if I could just for a second, because that's a big issue right now in Cleves. Being a municipality, we have the ability to do zoning. There are some residents who think that it would be a good idea to just dissolve the village and go into Miami Township where there really isn't any zoning enforcement. You're relying on Hamilton County zoning. Could you speak a little bit about why zoning is so important to the water supply?
Everything that's put on top of the ground that is bad stuff, I just explained. The aquifer in Cleves is 3 miles wide. So you got the Miami River and then a mile and a half. Find out where your house is. Okay? Do you want to dump gasoline out of your lawnmower on the ground? Probably you should not.
I would say not.
But
we have people that do.
There are people that do, and they really shouldn't do that because eventually it's going to rain and it's going to go down into the aquifer. The aquifer in Cleves, you're only talking, you can put a straw on the ground and get probably 1,500, I'm exaggerating here, a minute at 5 or 6 feet. That's how close the aquifer is to our property. And that was one of the problems when we were doing with Chevron was Hooven. Hooven sat across from the plant. It's on the other side of the river. Why should we be concerned about that? Because there's people that live in Hooven. They have basements. Okay, they got drains. The drains goes to a septic tank. So is that going to come up and go through the walls of their property? I think there's monitoring wells in their land.
There are, because I attend the meetings with Chevron today, and just for clarification on the video, at the time, this back in the 80s, that was Gulf Oil, okay?
Right,
and
Gulf.
Then Chevron bought them out.
Chevron bought them out because they got their offshore drilling rights that Gulf owned.
Okay.
That's so, but they had a lot of problems with the way people were treating the ground. In the 30s and 40s, there's a war. If the stills got full, they ran over. There also was a train that went through there, and to prime the pump, so to speak, that every boxcar dropped 5 gallons of gasoline. And then there was a bulk plant where they filled trucks. If it got spilled on the ground, people were not as environmentally correct as they should have been in those days. We had a war to fight. We had Korea, another war, and then you got Vietnam. And then they bought what was done for 30 years there. So it wasn't exactly their fault. EPA, was founded in 1963?
Well, actually, I think it was later than that. I think it was during the Nixon administration.
Yeah.
So it didn't come about to probably 1973 or 74, I think, is when it came in. But all that time, there was really no...
There was no regs.
Yeah.
No regulation on what you could do. People did. They just saw it and thought it was going to be all right. In the meantime, Texas Eastern comes in. What we're doing with the water with Chevron, okay? Texas Eastern is they move gasoline through, I think it's really crude.
Is it through pipelines or?
It's pipelines. It goes all over the United States. And they did have, when Chevron was opening across the street, there was a valve there. So what they were going to do was they were going to drag a line across. Now our wells are still in Cleves where the schools were. So they were going to drag a line across the Great Miami River, and they were going to come up on the other side by Jordan Road, and they were going to bring that down and go to Cincinnati or wherever they were going to take their pipeline. Our board was really very environmentally savvy, so
You're talking about the water board now.
the water board.
Yeah.
So the water board's fighting all this. I mean, so they were afraid that would act as a conduit for that. It was going to go through this 25 million gallon of gasoline that Chevron was pumping off. And they were afraid that would act as a conduit, and then the gasoline would come across the Great Miami River and hit our wells.
Okay.
So Texas Eastern can eminent domain
yeah.
property.
Yeah.
They were given that right in World War II. So they're a big company. So I remember when they came in, because they were in Alamo renting cars, and they all had boots on and hats from Texas Eastern. So they were digging over the ditch by where Curtis is now, and they came into my office and wanted to know, because we were testing for VOCs, which is a gasoline product. We were testing for that every month on our own wells. And so there was only one place in Ohio at that time that did the test. So they came in and they wanted to know if I was testing for VOCs where I would send the samples. And so I gave him this information. And the one guy stood there and he said, well, maybe we just shut a match on it, maybe it'll see if it burns. I told the guy.
This would be prior to EPA we're talking about now.
No, the EPA was sort of involved.
Okay.
What we did with the EPA was, first thing our environmental attorney did, this is all running together.
That's okay.
Our environmental attorney, the Ohio EPA is the Ohio EPA. So the first thing he did was got the spill relocated to the EPA in Chicago, which is a federal EPA. So from all the time that we're dealing with the EPA, he's got it up there at federal level. The real problem with all the EPA is they know what they're doing, and if they're there very long, what they will do is some industry will come and hire them away, and then you have to go through it all over again. So anyway, we work with the EPA a lot, and the attorney did a great job.
And you're talking about, just so I'm clarifying, I think I understand. What you're talking about is people that were working for the EPA were hired away probably by the companies.
Yes.
And then you had to replace somebody who didn't have the background.
Oh, yeah. Had to go through it all over again. At the same time, we're dealing with Texas Eastern, and we don't want that line to come across the Great Miami. I will have to say they listened to us. They came in, their home offices are out in California and San Francisco, so they sent people in, and I remember because I was there. I'm a clerk, I gotta take minutes, and so they laid out this map, and they said, well, we really need to get that airline fuel to the airport, okay? And they said, well, where would we put it? And I'm looking at the map, and to me, it's obvious where you should put it, because we got power lines. Power lines are already condemned ground. So I looked at the guy and I said, well, they're only for power lines, those easements, but they came out along Kilby Road, they go over the hill, Mount Nebo, go over to Cliff Road. They're electric.
This is over towards Brower Road and that area you're talking about?
Yeah, you see the towers, they're easements for a power line. I said, well, maybe you ought to think about putting where the power lines are, because it's already condemned ground. The people own it, they mow it, but there's an easement on it. I think it was 50-foot easement. Oh, well, maybe we can do that. So, guess what they did?
They took your suggestion.
They took the suggestion. It was a good thing, because if you look at Hooven and you look at the Great Miami Aquifer and you look at the Whitewater Aquifer, you're going to see a hill. Like, when they dig along 128, you can plainly see the shale. That goes down 85 feet to separate those two aquifers. So that's when we really knew we should really move the wells to Kilby Road and get in the Whitewater Aquifer. We still had the hydrogeologists working for us. We still had environmental attorneys, and it was a 10-year fight.
So this winds up in the court too at some point, correct?
No.
No, I thought there was a lawsuit where there was a consent decree signed.
The consent decree was for the guy that was mining gravel.
Okay, that's a different story.
That's a different story.
Okay. So Chevron, there was never a lawsuit with. Okay. All right. So, in respect to today,
Well, we had to find a place to put our wells.
well, well, true, because this contamination was moving towards our current wells,
Right.
and so we had to get it out of there. But Chevron's still doing testing of those wells, I believe, today, aren't they?
The one EPA guy told me, and he was a young man, that it would never, ever be really cleaned up in his lifetime. You're talking about a major spill, some of it was water soluble. It's really important. I can't stress the importance of keeping your water clean. I mean, there's a lot of things out there that we use today, nitrates on your farmer's fields, and all that stuff should not be used. Now, where we moved them to, there was two or three parcels. We looked down at the end of Cleves, but we decided that wasn't the best. But then we decided the whitewater aquifer would be better. So when they put the line through, Texas Eastern, the way I understand it, is triple cased. And it also they have monitoring things on there. They can tell if it loses a teaspoon of VOCs or gasoline, then they know it right away. And they went up to Cliff Road, and they bought some property there, and they put an X across the river. They went down underneath the bedrock of the Ohio River. They drilled straight down. They went, I think it's 84 feet, something like that. You'd have to check that. And they went underneath the bedrock of the Ohio River and came up on the X.
So that there could never be the opportunity to
If it's
pollute.
in, like over when we're down, our wells were down, they were up higher in Cleves because we're right near the river. What we got in the whitewater aquifer is it goes down, punch through that, there's 2 layers of shale. That must have been from the glacier or something. So there's 2 layers of shale, which protects your well system a little bit. If there's a spill, for instance, on the highway, it gives you time to get in there and get that out and make sure it doesn't go down any further. The wells are 125 feet deep. So then it goes through sand and gravel again. And so, but you got that 2 feet of shale that's a layer of protection there.
Yeah, but this is a lot of information you have stored in your head. How did you learn all this? Is this from the meetings you were in, or?
Well, you read, but I was in the meetings and, you're studying what you're supposed to know. And we had a very, very good environmental attorney. I cannot stress that enough. The thing is, the auditors come in and they're looking at
We're talking about the state auditors.
state auditors. The village of Cleves, the water department, all the books in the Cleves at that time were audited by state auditors, and they read your minutes and all that kind of stuff. And the one looked at me, and I think we got, I don't know, maybe the whole thing was $3.2 million, but we got over $2 million for that water plant. That bought the property. You'd have to check that figure.
When you say you got it, explain. What do you mean you got? Where did it come from?
Chevron.
Oh, it came from Chevron. And how'd you guys manage that?
I don't know.
So Chevron paid for our current plant over there in Kilby Road,
Except for the fluoride.
except for the fluoride.
Yes, they paid for the property. We got 40 acres, I think, and which protects your wells good. And those wells are good till the year 2050. They can produce that much water. So,
And what happens after 2050?
well, you could drill another well, or you probably have to enlarge your plant. The thing is now, you don't use as much water in your home because you got shower heads that got that thing in it, and you got a lot of conservation that goes in people's new homes, so you're using less water. But so the auditor asked me, how did you get that without suing them? I said, we had a good attorney.
Okay.
Kevin Hopper was the best attorney. I thought he had retired, but I understand he is still in business, and he's a good person to know.
All right.
He never contaminated himself. And I mean to say by that, he never.
Whatever this noise guy is here, he needs to get a new muffler. Go ahead. He should be able to hear now.
Yeah.
So you were saying that he never contaminated himself. Go ahead and explain.
He never contaminated himself with big companies.
So in other words, you're saying he was an honest attorney that wasn't going to take any bucks behind the scenes.
No. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm shaking my head. No, he wouldn't take anything.
No. So in other words, there was no influencing him. Is what you're saying. He was going to do the right thing.
He said it was the time when he could wear a white hat. Okay, that's how I explained himself. So when we ran into trouble, that Jill knew him because they had done work for Chevron in Cleveland. That's what big companies do. They go along. I mean, Thompson Hine Fleury's a good firm, so they go along and they do a little bit of work here, a little bit of work here, and a little bit of work here.
So
here comes a little tiny waterworks that wants a defense, and where are you going to find an attorney that's good enough to fight their attorneys?
Is there anything else you want to tell us about this particular case or not?
It was fun. It was nerve-wracking. It was fun, and I always remember you had to post public notice. Okay.
So, the water board, when it existed, was an appointed board, correct?
No, they were elected.
They were elected. Oh, that's correct. They get elected, but if they don't have anybody on the board, the council appoints. Is that how that works?
That probably is correct.
Okay. So, as an elected board, why do you think that's a better way to go than
because they know what they're doing.
well,
that's
to be
their
on the
goal.
board, what type of things you need? In other words, not just anybody should be on the water board.
Well, you need people that are willing to take a stand, number one, because you're talking about your water, for goodness sake. And, I mean, the one guy was a vice president for PNC Bank. He always watched money pretty close. I gave him an income statement every month, so they knew exactly where their money was going. The clerk wrote the checks. I just gave him vouchers. And then, Don owned a company. He knew it was on 3rd Street, downtown Cincinnati.
But finding those people are not all that easy, Bev.
They are all around us in Cleves.
Well,
you got a guy that surveys up there that's Dale Oppenheimer's worth $1 million to Cleves.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is, public service doesn't have. There's not a lot of money to be made when you're on the water board.
$75 a month.
So, some people today, especially the way society is today, they don't want to give up their private time for this kind of stuff.
Yes, I know that. That it's what you do for your family, for your community, and how you want to live. And we have to be involved with our government, or we won't have a government. And you have to always remember you want to be honest. I mean, you can't just say it's going to be okay, because it never is. What will happen, what could happen, will happen. I don't know if I made myself clear.
Oh, you did. I'm going to end that here on this one.